everybody so much for coming to Estrella Community College's first annual World Folktale Throwdown. It's the first time we've done an event like this. It's going to be a lot of fun. We hope to keep doing them in the future. And here's how it's going to work. First of all, I'll introduce myself. My name is George Lepercio, and I'm part of the storytelling faculty along with Ms. Susan Malmo and Beverly Smith Dawson. We've been putting this together and based on sort of the model from South Mountain Community College's Greek and Roman myth throwdown, where the Storytelling Institute is located. And we were sort of inspired by what they did there, and we decided to bring it here and to keep it into the realm of folklore. So how the event works is there's going to be, theoretically, 26 storytellers. And they're going to, one for every letter of the alphabet. There's going to be, we're a few short. We didn't quite make 26 this year, but we were just a few shy of that. If there's a couple program modifications, which I'll kind of alert you to as we kind of go. Everybody has a program in their hands, hopefully. And if you don't, make sure you get one, because these are also going to double as your ballot. This is a competition. So, a very friendly competition. A competition in the lightest sense of the word. Because they're all winners, really. But you're going to be voting for your favorite storytellers. I urge you to wait till the end of the event before you start the voting. So you've had a chance to see all the storytellers, and then you're going to just put a check mark next to your favorite 7 stories. The winners, those who have the most votes, are going to win a couple of amazing prizes, magical prizes, that were handmade by Ms. Susan Allen. A magic wand, and a scroll with a decree that will impact the teller's life forever. And so those are what's at stake, so take it very seriously, okay? And so you'll get to hear lots of different stories, lots of different tellers. Some of these tellers, these are all students in our program right now. Some of them have never been on stage before. This is their first time ever being on stage. That in and of itself is a huge accomplishment. We'd love your absolute support. Laugh when things are funny, cry when they are sad, and applaud wildly. It always makes for the best stories, because this is a very sort of collaborative process, even with the audience. You guys are a big part of this process as well. Folktales and fairy tales. We don't often get into a room of adults and grown-ups and tell each other folktales and fairy tales, but it's really important to do so. One of the great sort of folklore scholars in America named Jack Zipes, he writes a lot about fairy tales. And something he says that I really believe, and one of the reasons we're doing this, is that it has generally been assumed that fairy tales were first created for children and are largely the domain of children, but nothing could be further from the truth. The fairy tale emanates from specific struggles to humanize bestial and barbaric forces which have terrorized our minds and communities in concrete ways, threatening to destroy free will and human compassion. The fairy tale sets out to conquer this concrete terror through metaphors. And I believe that. I think that's what we're doing here today. I think that covers it. So, and one last thing. I would like to make a huge special thanks to Sean Bavone, who is a West Valley storyteller extraordinaire. He's a professional storyteller and a professional storytelling coach. He lent us his time this week to coach these storytellers who are performing tonight. And if you're interested in the storytelling, he does it in all different kinds of mediums, corporate storytelling, educational settings, all different kinds of places. He's a huge asset to our community. And if you're interested at all, his website is seantells.com, okay? All right, that is the last thing I will say. And so let's please give a big round of applause for our first storyteller, Michael Nocton.
Hello. A long time ago, when animals could walk and talk, the most talkative of all were the clams, and they loved telling stories. Some were true, but some not so much. One day, a clam went to talk to Eagle, who was eating his breakfast, and the clam said, "Hey, Eagle!" "What?" "Raven thinks he's a better hunter than you. Do you think so?" flew off in a bit of rage. And another clam went to talk to Otter, who was splashing and playing in the water. And the clam said, "Wow, you really do look foolish when you play in the water." "Who said I look foolish when I play in the water?" "Oh, just Beaver. She thinks she's the hardest working of all the animals, and everybody should be just like her." "Well, I'm gonna tell Beaver what's on my mind, because that is just mean." And so fighting and chaos was spread amongst the animals, until, of course, Raven called an emergency meeting to say, "Oi, we all know what the problem is here. It is the clams and their mean-spirited stories, so we've got to stop them. So what do you guys got?" So the animals talked amongst themselves, going, but they couldn't come up with anything. So Raven finally asked Beaver, "Beaver, you are the hardest working among all of us. What do you think we should do to stop the clams?" And so Beaver, scratching her chin, going, an idea had struck her head. She gathered all of the clams and brought them to the edge of the beach. And when the time was right, the tide would roar in. And the clams would be buried beneath the sand. And every time they would try to speak, they would get sand and water in their mouths, going, And so, if you're ever walking by the beach and you see squirts of water, do not be alarmed. It is simply the clams trying to gossip. The end.
Keep clapping for our next storyteller. Bye-bye.
So one day, Brer Rabbit and Brer Coon and Brer Bear and Brer Fox and all the other animals decided that they were going to plant a garden of corn together. So they got up early one morning and started raking and trudging, and everybody was working so hard, but it was a hot summer's day. But Brer Rabbit kept going because he didn't want anybody to think that he was lazy. That is, until he got an idea. "Ow!" he said, "I got a briar stuck in my paw," and then stuck his hand in his mouth. Now, the other animals were very concerned for him, so they told him to go pluck out the briar and wash his hands and make sure everything's okay. And that's exactly what Brer Rabbit wanted to hear. So with one of his paws in his mouth, he waved goodbye to his friends and headed off into the forest looking for a nice place to take a nap. Nothing too long, just something quick. And it wasn't long until he came across a well in the forest with a bucket at the top and a bucket at the bottom. And he thought to himself, "Oh, that looks like a mighty fine place to take a nap." And so, without thinking much, he hopped in the bucket at the top and started shooting down the well. He was screaming and hanging and scared, and he didn't know what was going on. That wasn't until he landed at the bottom and started going up and down, up and down, thinking, "How am I going to get out of this?" Well, Brer Fox had been watching Brer Rabbit all morning, so he knew that he didn't have a briar stuck in his paw. So he followed him into the forest and thought, "What is that darn rabbit up to?" Well, he saw him hop in the bucket, go down the well, and he realized he must be hiding some of his gold in there. "I'm gonna get me some of that gold." So he walked over to the well and looked in. But it was too dark to see anything. So he listened, but he didn't hear anything. And that's when he shouted, "Brer Rabbit, what are you doing down there?" Brer Rabbit looked up, and he thought to himself, "Oh, I know a way to get out of this. I'm just getting a whole mess of fish for everybody. There's loads of fish down here. Why don't you come down and help?" Well, Brer Fox didn't believe that, but he decided to go along with it because he realized that this was an invitation to get some of Brer Rabbit's gold. So he said, "How do I get down there?" "Oh, it's easy. Just hop in the bucket at the top and you'll come straight down." And so Brer Fox did as Brer Rabbit instructed and hopped in the bucket at the top. Well, Brer Fox, being heavier than Brer Rabbit, started to shoot down the well, and Brer Fox went up the well, and he said, "What comes up must come down. Hold on tight and you'll land safe and sound," and hopped out of the well. He started heading back to the patch of corn where all the other animals were, because he was so excited to tell everybody that Brer Fox was down in the well muddying up the waters. And so he went back to the patch, and Brer Fox was now down in there. And it wasn't until a hunter came by the well and started to pull up the water that he realized that he needed to get out of there as soon as possible. And so when he was pulled up at the top, he ran off into the forest, and the hunter didn't have time to grab his gun, much less shoot Brer Fox. And so they both ended up back at the corn patch, trudging and raking and looking back at each other once in a while and smiling because they realized that they looked so silly going up and down that darn well.
All right. So you can keep clapping for our next storyteller, Ruben. Let me give you one heads up here. I forgot to mention, as the storytellers are telling, they only have 3 minutes to tell their story. If the music turns on and starts to fade up, it'll get gradually louder until we can no longer hear them. That means they've run out of time. So that's all that means. It's not mean-spirited at all.
It happened not too long ago, down south in Georgia, when a rich couple had the leisure of doing something most of us can't do because we're not rich, and that was sleep. So this rich couple, they decided, you know, the corn is ready, but we're not going to harvest it today because we're rich, so we're just going to sleep. So they slept, and they slept, and they slept, and they slept some more. And the day passed by, and they just kept sleeping. Now, the crow, they were gathered in their big oak tree, and they noticed that there wasn't any rustling going around in the house. And looked at the corn, and they saw, guys, this is our chance. So they got out of the oak tree, and they all started flying around the cornfield. One of the crows peeked inside the windows. He didn't see anything. It was dead quiet. He said, all right, guys, start eating. So all the crows, caw, caw, and they started gathering, and they started eating the corn as fast as they could because they didn't get a chance like this. Now, the old rooster saw what was happening, and he did his thing. Cock-a-doodle-doo! Wake up, the crow are in the corn. But the rich couple kept sleeping. Furious, the rooster kept going, cock-a-doodle-doo! The crow are in the corn! But the crow, to their joy, they weren't interrupted at all by the couple because the rich couple kept sleeping and sleeping and sleeping. The rooster, just in disgust, gave up. The more he yelled, the faster the crow ate. Got to a point where he just said, well, the corn are gone, and all the other farm animals agreed with him. By the end of the day, the rich couple kept sleeping, and the crow ate all of the corn. Now, I assume that when the rich couple woke up, they didn't really care because, as I said, they were rich. So they just probably kept sleeping the next day. But now, to this day, when you hear someone say in Georgia, the crow and the corn, that means it's time to get up.
Great. And keep it going for Savannah.
In ancient times, a giant was walking down a great highway when suddenly a creature stepped in his path and said, "Stop, don't take one step further." What? A creature that I could crush between my fingers wishes to stand in my way? How dare you? I am death, and no one can disobey me, not even you. Well, the giant began to struggle against death, until a great battle ensued. When the giant got the upper hand and struck death down, he said, "What am I supposed to do now? Just lie here in a corner? No one will die in the world, and it will become so full of people they won't be able to stand beside one another." Well, during all of this, a young boy was walking down the highway as well, and he was just walking around and looking every which way, when he suddenly saw a figure lying by a stone in the field. So he ran to the fallen person, and he gave him some water out of his flask and helped him until the figure could get back on his feet. Do you know who I am and who it is that you have just saved? No, I do not know who you are. I am death, and though I can spare no one, to show you that I am grateful, I will not fall upon you unexpectedly. Instead, I will send my messengers to you when it is time for you to depart from this world. Well, great. It is something that I will know when you are arriving. So they departed and parted ways, and the boy went to live his life happily. But youth and health did not last long, and he soon fell ill and said, I wish these days of sickness were over, but I know that I will not die, for death will send his messengers before then. One day when he was feeling a bit better, someone tapped him on the shoulder, and when he turned to look, there was Death, who said to him, Come with me, your time to depart from this world has come. What? But you said you would send your messengers before then. I have seen none. Are you going to go back on your promise? Death was silent for a moment, and then said, Have I not sent to you all of my messengers? Did fever not strike you down? Did toothache not bite into your cheek? Did your ears not ring? And did my brother Sleep not come to you every night to remind you of me? Did you not lie in your bed at night as though you were already dead? He could say nothing, and he succumbed to his fate and went with death into the next life.
And keep that topic going for your next storyteller.
So every New Year's Day, the legend in the rumor was the same, that cows can speak at 12 o'clock at night. However, everybody believed the rumor, but nobody bothered to go test it out or to experience the rumor. However, one farmer got tired of the rumors and said, you know what, I'm gonna test this rumor and see if the cows really do talk at 12. So New Year's Eve came, everybody was having dinner with their families or with their loved ones, but this man was like, I'm gonna prove this theory. So he did. So around 11:40, he went to the barn where the cows were. He got up the barn into a little hay to see if the cows really did talk. So he waited. Nothing happened. It's like, oh, this must have been just a rumor, a legend, everybody says. So he waited. So 12 hit, nothing. The cows don't talk. So this man thought, oh, this must be a joke. I'm gonna go home. This is not real with my family. So as he was about to leave, he heard some mumbling. He's like, what is this? He got up and down to see it on the bottom of the barn. The cows were actually talking. He can hear many conversations of different cows having different conversations. He's like, what? Can this be? Can these cows really be talking? So he was amazed and shocked at this discovery. And he heard two conversations in particular. He's like, oh, hey, buddy cow. Hey, buddy. Oh, I believe our master will not live to see another year. The master heard this, shocked and frightened. He's like, oh no, what did I just hear? I must tell everybody about my discovery. And he was also scared because he said the cows he said going to live to see another year. So frightened and scared, the little poor guy went down to the barn, got the little rope. But as he went down, the rope accidentally got his feet and he hanged and fell to his death, broke his neck. Ever since that day, nobody dared to ever test that theory that do cows talk at 12 o'clock at night in New Year's.
That was Hiram. And your next story card is Camilla.
Carol found herself walking up to the psychic store feeling very nervous. She never really thought about getting her future read to her and knowing and thinking that she could know what was going to happen to her in the future. But then she remembered her best friend just went and the psychic told her that she would get a new boyfriend, a new job, and she would win the lottery. And sure enough, she got all of that. So she thought the psychic must be a genius. And she went inside, introduced herself to the psychic, and they sat down and got right to it. The psychic started reading her hand and looking, and suddenly Carol noticed that the psychic's facial expressions weren't the best. She looked a little concerned. At the same time, she thought, well, maybe she's not doing it right, or maybe she just doesn't know what she's doing. She didn't want to think the worst, but then the psychic looked up to her and said, I was thinking, how about I do another reading for you, a different kind of reading, but it'll be free of charge. And Carol thought, well, my best friend didn't get it, but it's free of charge, so I'll just do it anyway. And so she did. The psychic did another reading, and still, she kind of looked a little upset. She didn't really want to look Carol in the eye and tell her what it was. But then the psychic said, Carol, I've decided to tell you your future in a different kind of way. Instead of telling you face to face what it is, I'll write it down on a piece of paper and put it in an envelope. This way, you can read it and take it home and read it in your own personal space. So Carol thought, that's actually very nice for the psychic to do. That way I can read my own future in my own personal space. And so the psychic said, all right. She went into the other room, and Carol heard the pen writing on the paper quickly, and she hurried back to her and said, here you go, here's your envelope that carries your future. Carol hurried out and went into the car. As she got onto the highway, she noticed herself speeding up very quickly so that she could get into the fastest lane. And as she did, she noticed she was approaching a car in front of her, so, she slowed down, but the brakes were out. They weren't working. She was going faster and faster, and she couldn't slow down. So she swerved very quickly to get out of the way of the car in front of her, and when she did, the car spun once, twice, 3 times, causing Carol's instant death. And a few days later, her grieving parents looked inside the car to find the white envelope, and inside, it only said 4 words, you have no future.
Next up is Alejandro.
This one's a blessing can be a curse, it's not the giants. Long time ago, God created giants. And when he created the giants, he made them tall and wide. Their appetites were enormous. The giants' favorite meals were to eat cows and horses. When they ate, they didn't eat 1 or 2 cows, 1 or 2 horses at a time. They ate 5 or 10 cows, 5 or 10 horses at a time. The giants would send off their fathers and their sons to hunt, but it's a dangerous task, so not all of them return. After a while, long after God had left them alone, the giants, because of their appetite, they entered a famine. They lacked food. The famine caused a disruption in the natural balance of things. So God felt this disruption. He felt the disruption of the balance of things. So he goes down and travels back to Earth to see what's going on. He looks around and he sees no livestock. He looks around again and he sees the giants. They're eating. They're feasting on the livestock. So he takes a moment and he concludes to himself, it's the giants. They're disrupting the balance. So he goes up to the giants and he talks to the giants and he says to them, giants, I must banish you from the land. Your appetite, your eating disorder has caused a famine in the world. You have to go. The giants, they're shocked by this. But God, you made us this way. You gave us this appetite. What can we do differently? This is who we are. And God puzzles at this. And he takes a second to reply. You're right. I'm going to offer you 2 different alternatives. You get to choose your own path from here on out. I give you my 2 blessings or my curse. It's your choice. The giants take the blessings. God gives them the blessings. 2 blessings, God explains. The first, you will conceive nothing but sons. The second, I will replenish your livestock, but they will conceive nothing but daughters. The giants are overwhelmed. They take the 2 blessings and they continue on their way. God leaves. A generation later, 4 giants remain around one calf. 4 giants remain around their last calf. A revelation hits them. They accept their fate. They eat their calf. They travel to the nearest cave where they sit in silence and await their moment of death.
Yeah. And your next storyteller is Doc.
Good evening. Parental advisory notice. This story takes place long before fairy tales had a happy ending. And it takes place in a very dark forest. So dark, they called it the Black Forest. This is the story of Hansel and Gretel. But did you know that there were 3 in the beginning? There was Hansel, Gretel, and their little baby brother, John. No one ever hears about John, because John didn't last long. The story takes place in the dark forest, in the Black Forest, in a time of great famine. The famine was so immense that everyone was starving and everyone was dying. My, you're looking kind of tasty, because I'm hungry and haven't eaten in a while. That was a thought that went through the stepmother's mind. Now keep in mind, she wasn't an evil woman. Maybe she was wicked, but she wasn't the evil stepmother we're used to in Disney films. So they decide, we must take the children and we must go. So they go to the forest. The children, though, they're pretty clever, they're smart. They knew what was happening. So they left themselves a path of moon rocks and just plop, plop, plop. Every few feet. That night, the sister has a breakdown. She's freaking out. I would be too, wouldn't you? We're lost, we're abandoned in this forest where it's so dark I can't see the stars. Hans is just like, just chill, it's gonna be okay. As soon as the moon starts to break through the cloud cover and the thick canopy of the forest, here comes the pathway home, lighting up like disco lights. So, as they make their way home, they realize, wait, we weren't welcome there. We were gonna die anyways, so what do? Well, Gretel needed to go home because she needed to be home where she thought she was safe. So they go home. Now, they're all still starving. There's been no lifting of the famine. So that night, they get home. Dad is ecstatic that they're back. Stepmother, not so much. Because now she has to feed 3 more mouths. Ah, an idea. John looks tasty. So the next morning, there's a big pot of soup. But there's only 4 mouths. I'll let you do the thinking on that. So now the time has come again where Hansel and Gretel, they must go because they can't feed them. So surely an animal of the forest will take care of this daunting task for Mom and Dad. So they go out there and they abandon the children. No happy endings, but we're not at that point yet. So night comes, it gets dark, it gets cold. They have a fire going, but it's not strong enough. There were no moon rocks left, and I'm pretty sure that wicked stepmother figured out that one. So, the next morning rolls around, they're exhausted. They had no sleep, they were tired. And as they continued through the forest, oh, here comes a bear. Oh, I say goodbye. And that's my story.
All right. Next up is Jennifer.
There once were 2 brothers that had just attended their father's funeral. And once they got home, disregarding the fact that their father's will was to leave everything to both of them, the elder brother said, I'm going to take everything because I'm the oldest. And he shoves his little brother out of the house and lets his brother wander around. His brother comes along to some abandoned, unwanted field. And he begins to make a mud house and begins to tend to the ground sweetly and until it starts to bring up crops. He eventually met a lady, which he married, and they had children. He was happy until a drought happened. Now, he saw his children, his wife, his family were starving, So he decided he would ask his brother for help. When he went over to his brother's house, his brother opened the door and said, "What do you want?" He said, "My family is kind of in a little shaky situation, so do you think you can spot me some?" He said, "No, because I'm okay, so why should I take care of you?" And he closed the door. When the door closed, a little bird fell out of a tree, and the little brother picked it up and noticed that its leg was broken. So he healed it and set it free. He went back home, and a few days later, he heard chirping. The bird was outside, and it flew around his house 3 times, dropping a seed into the ground, and out came gigantic melons. His children were excited, so when they said, "Dad, can we eat some of these melons?" He said, "Yeah, sure, why not?" And they rushed over to whack them open. But when they opened it, there were no melons. It was gold! So they rushed over to the market, bought some clothes, some food, made an actual house, and the news spread widely until it got to the elder brother. The elder brother said, "I'm the oldest, why don't I get cool melons?" So he went over and searched for a bird to help, but he had darkness in his heart. So when he helped the bird and did everything his brother did, and his melons came up, they were gigantic, and he's like, "Yeah, I mean, why wouldn't they?" And he opened the first one, and out came a gang of men who beat him up, kicked him a few times, and stole all of his money. He's like, maybe this would do, you know? And he went over to another one, out came spiders, snakes, dangerous things, until he lost everything. He became a beggar, and one day while he was begging, he saw his little brother wandering around, and he approached him. He looked down and said, "You don't need to talk to me. I don't need any of your pity or mercy or anything. I was too cruel to you." And the little brother said, "There's nothing more important than family." And he grabbed his hand and took him home.
All right. Keep clapping for Michael.
In the beginning of time, there was a bear. This bear owned something named Fire. Fire was very helpful to Bear and all the other critters, and Bear shared it amongst the critters. It kept light for them during the night, and it kept them warm during the winter. And one day, Bear put fire at the edge of a forest and invited all the critters around and said, "Hey, let's gather up these acorns and we can cook them with fire, and I bet you they'll taste very good." And so they did. They grabbed all the acorns they could find all in the forest, and they started cooking them, and they started eating them. And Rat-Will said, "Oh, these are delicious, man. They're so tasty and toasty." And all the critters agreed. And soon, they ran out of acorns. And Bear said, "We need to go deeper into the forest and get some more acorns, because I'm still hungry. How about you guys?" And they're like, "Yeah, we're still hungry." And so that all the critters leave and go deep into the forest and leave Fire all alone. And so, hours passed by and they still weren't back. Fire started to get smaller and smaller and weaker and weaker. And finally, Fire, realizing what was happening to him, said, "Help! Help!" But nobody could hear him. None of the critters were around to hear him. And so, hours went by until a man passed by. And he was just walking by, minding his own business, and Fire, out of desperation, said, "Help! Help!" And the man came up to him and says, "Well, what do you need?" And he said, "I need food. Feed me! Feed me!" And he says, "Okay, what do you need?" And he said, "What do you eat?" And he says, "Well, I eat anything that can be burned, twigs, branches, logs, leaves, I don't care." And he says, "Okay." So he goes, picks up 4 large branches. And he goes up to Fire and puts one facing north. And very quickly that branch went away because Fire was extremely hungry. And he ate the twig as fast as he could. Then he put the second branch facing east. And again, the branch was eaten very fast. And then he put another one to the west. And little by little, the fire started getting bigger, bigger, and stronger. And finally, he put the other one facing south. And by this time, fire was already big and normal as it was. And they spend hours chatting together, and finally, Bear and all the other critters come with a handful of acorns, and a very angry Fire starts getting bigger and very angry and says, "Why did you leave me? Why did you leave me?" And so Fire starts getting bigger and bigger and getting white hot until Bear and all the other critters were covering their eyes, and they ran away very scared. And from that moment on, Fire belonged to man.
And next up is Antonio.
I'll make it work. There once was a coyote who was very hungry. And he'd come across this one little fox who was watching these black birds. And he's like, that's easy picking right there. So the coyote sneaks up right behind the fox and tackles him. And the fox is like, no, please, 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 please don't eat me. I'm watching these birds for my master. And if you help me, I'll give you 2 birds. And then the coyote was like, all right, easy picking. So he stood there, and then the fox was like, let me go get my master because he's running late. Just wait right here, right? And the coyote's like, all right, I'll wait here and watch him. Or the fox takes off. Coyote sits there, watching these birds. And he's like, you know what? Doesn't matter, I take my birds now. He jumps and gets a bird, and all these crows fly away, and he's like, this fox tricked me. So he's mad, he's hungry, and he takes off to find this fox again. He's following this trail, going over these hills, different stuff like that. And finally he finds this fox again, and the fox sees him, and he starts running with the plan quickly. He's thinking he knows what to do. He runs to a cliff, and he starts holding up the cliff ledge, and he's holding it like this, pretending like he's holding it up, and he's like, I need help. Hold. And the coyote's like, okay. And he starts holding it, and he's like, keep holding it, I'll go get a stick. Credit. So the coyote's like, all right. So he's holding it, and he's breaking sweat, and it's like the hardest thing ever. Fox has gone away. And the coyote can't hold it any longer, so he just drops it, let's go, and he starts running, looking back, and then it's not falling. That fox tricked me again. Now he's hungry and tired and annoyed, and he takes off as fast as he can to find that fox one more time. And he finds him again by this water. He's like, I am done with you, you're going in my belly, and that's final. So he jumps over, and the fox is like, no, stop. I got really thirsty, and I got some drink, and look, I tried to get us something to eat, and I got us this cheese, look. He points at the reflection of the moon in the water. But I dropped it. It's at the very bottom of the lake, I'm sorry. And he was like, I got a plan though. Maybe we can tie some rocks on you, and then I could throw you, and you can jump. And then you can get down fast and get the cheese, and then I'll pull you back up. Is that good? Like, yeah, let's do it. So they start tying rocks on him, on his tail, around his waist, everywhere. And they're like, okay, on 3, I'll throw you, and you jump. 1, 2, 3. Big splash. As the bubbles run up, Fox went home. Thank you.
All right. Working our way through, our next storyteller is Lena.
Lion was very vain and very proud. He loved to prance around the savannah, roaring, I am a very mighty king. I am a very mighty king. One day, as he was walking through his savannah, he came upon a lake. It was very calm, so the top was like glass. And he happened to look upon himself, and he said, look, I'm a very mighty king. I'm going to throw myself a party and invite all the animals in the savannah to come. The giraffe, the hyena, the elephant, maybe even the gazelle. And so he sent a message out and said, all my mighty subjects, come, see how great I am, see how wonderful I am. And then he thought, I will go home and I will dress in all my finery. So he went home and he put on his great golden crown, and he put on his heavy, fine robe, and his medals of gold and silver. But they were very heavy, but he didn't care. He knew he looked mighty. And so he pranced in front of his castle, and all of his animal subjects came, the gazelle, the elephant, the hyena. and even the monkeys and the baboons, they all came. But along them also came the teeny tiny little beetle. The little beetle would sing to himself as he moved out of the way of all the animals that were coming, and he would sing, I am little, I am small. People can't see me, but inside I am as tall as a tree. And so finally all of the animals assembled in the courtyard of the mighty king, who would run around prancing. I am mighty, I am a mighty king. All of my animal subjects bow before me. Of course, all the animals, the gazelle, the elephant, the hyena, the giraffe, they all bowed. Yes, mighty king. And the mighty king roared, I am the mighty king. And he came upon the teeny tiny little beetle. Beetle, I don't see you very well. Are you bowing before me? Yes, mighty king, of course I am bowing before you. I don't believe that you are. You are so small, it's hard to see. Well, mighty king, if you just look down, you will see that I am indeed bowing before your greatness. So the mighty king, being distrustful, bowed down. But of course, he had a heavy crown, heavy robe, and heavy adornments. And when he bowed down, he fell, and he tumbled and tumbled and tumbled down until he landed in a muddy ditch. All of the animals, the giraffe, the elephant, the gazelle, and the apes all just laughed and laughed. The beetle just walked away. I am small, I am tiny. People look down and can't see me, but inside, I am as tall as a tree. The lion himself, he scurried away, embarrassed, and realized he was not so very mighty after all.
Next up is Letitia. We got letter N.
Once there was 3 lassies abandoned in the wood, and they walked and walked until they came to a cottage. They knocked on the door, and a woman said, "What do you want?" And Molly, being clever than all her sisters, said, "Please let us in. We're so tired, and we're hungry." And the woman let them in and said to her sisters, "Now hurry. My husband is a giant, and he'll soon as eat you as he looks at you." And so when they were at the fire, not eating their food yet, they heard a fee, fi, fo, fum. I smell the blood of an earthly one. And so the woman said, "Never you mind. These lassies will be gone soon. Come and eat." And so the giant sat down on the table, but the whole time he was staring at the sisters, and this made Molly distrust the giant. And so when the giant was finished eating his food, he said, "Woman, take these girls up to our own lassie's room. They'll sleep here tonight." And so the woman took the girls up to the room, but Molly, not trusting the giant, pretended to sleep. And so this is a good thing because she heard a creak, creak, creak. She heard the floorboards. And then she felt a hand around her neck, and then the giant put straw cords around her sister and her neck. And then the giant put pure gold chains around his own lassie's neck. And then he left the room. And Molly, being clever, took the straw ropes and traded them for the gold rope. And so the giant came back in, creeping in. She could feel the giant's hand on her neck. But then she could feel the lassies, the giant's lassies, being pulled out of the bed. And then she heard the sound, boom, boom, boom. The giant beat them until they were no more. And then he left the room triumphantly. And so Molly said, wake up," to his sisters. And she said that we need to get out of here. And And so Molly and her sisters ran out of the home. The giant, realizing what had happened, gave chase. And they came to the one-hair bridge. And Molly, being so clever, she crossed, her sisters crossed, and turned back to the giant and winked. And so they ran straight till they got to a beautiful castle. And the king said, "Molly, you're so clever. I bet you could go back and get the giant's sword, his pouch, and everything else." And so she did, and she was triumphant. And when she came back, the king married her off to his own sons. Thank you.
Next up is Tom Russell. Letter N.
Please permit this humble chorus to present you and take you to a land where the cedars flow, where the breeze flows through the cedars, carrying the smells of the earthly area up to the spires of the tops of the Padishah's castle and the minarets that exist there. Our protagonist, Nazar Din, mullah to the people, has just returned from the Great Hajj, the pilgrimage to Mecca. And he is tired, but he has received word that there is a moralist philosopher from many lands, or from the lands beyond, that has come to take and discuss with him many things of earth and of sky. He says he will do this in the morning, okay? And then come morning, obviously, when they meet, they decide that they will take and walk through the towns or walk through the town and enjoy the many things that exist, the bazaars. They will talk of the skies and of the things that exist in the earth. And you can never see the two sides of a dinar expressed in these two bits of humanity. Nazar Din, mullah to the people, is a simple man, of simple robes, of sandals upon his feet, and of a simple turban. Whereas the philosopher, the moralist, who is used to being in the bazaar in many courts, stands tall with his silks, his fine, clean turban, and of course his shoes that curl and have little bells on them. And they walk hand in hand through the bazaar, and through the hall, and through the alleyways of the city, talking of these things. And as night comes on, they take and decide that they will take and go to dinner after they have finished with the evening prayers, the vespers. Okay. Upon completion of this, they go to a favorite restaurant of Nazar Din's called Hussein's, and they ask the maitre d', "What is the special tonight?" And Hussein says, "Fish, fresh fish." Now, as anybody that's from the desert knows that fish is not easy to come by, let alone fresh fish. Perhaps if somebody knows a genie or something like that, maybe. Okay? So they sit down and they wait for their repast. They talk of many things again, still going over some of the same arguments that they had had before, walking through the bazaar. And then the food comes, this beautiful 2 samples of whitefish. Velvety color, scents coming off of there from citrus from the east and from spices in the south. But one is smaller than the other. Nazar Din, being a man of the people, well, he reaches for the larger one and takes it. But out of the corner of his eye, he notices that the courtier looks a little upset. He looks over and he says, "Sirrah, have I done anything to cause you consternation?" At which point, the courtier says to him, "You are being very selfish," and he goes into a diatribe of this. And then at the end of it, Nazar Din says to him, "Well, what would you have done?" At which point, the courtier says, "I, being a conscientious human, would have chosen the smarter fish." At which point, Nazar Din reaches down and says, "And here you go." At this point, Nazar Din had made the courtier put his mugfish where his mouth was.
All right. Keep clapping for our next storyteller, Austin. You're up next.
There was once an armadillo, and he loved music. He loved everything about it. He loved the sounds, the tones, and the way it made him feel. And one day, he was wandering through the forest, and he heard these sounds. And it was the crickets. So he approached these crickets, and he asked, "What can I do to make this sound? How can I sound like you guys?" And the crickets laughed in his face and said, "You can't make these sounds. You're just an armadillo. And armadillos don't make these kind of sounds." So this broke his heart, so he continued down the path he was walking. Then he heard these deep, deep sounds, and there were frogs. So he found the frogs, and he asked, "How can I make these sounds just like you guys?" And the frogs laughed and said, "You can't make these sounds. You're just an armadillo." So this broke his heart once again, and he continued down the path. And he heard the sound. And what do you know? It was these golden little finches. So he went and he approached them, and he asked, "How can I whistle just like you guys?" And the finches, they laughed in his face, and they said, "You can't whistle like us. You're just an armadillo." So once again, this broke his heart, and he continued down the path that he was walking. And he came up to this little shack, and it had a wizard, a real old wizard. He had a big gray beard. You could tell he'd been around a while. He was very wise. And they got to talking, and the armadillo explained how all he wanted to do in life was make music. So the wizard, just as all the others, told him, "You can't make music because you're just an armadillo." And obviously the armadillo knew this, and so he just kept telling them, "Well, that's all I want to do." So the wizard explained, "There's one thing you could do, that I could do, and that would be to kill you, but then you'd be an instrument." So the armadillo thought about it, and he made a little pros and cons list, and finally decided, "That's what I want to do. I want to be killed in order to be an instrument." So the wizard shoved his staff on the ground, turning him into an instrument. It was a beautiful instrument that made all the sounds he loved. So that wizard, he walked the path that that armadillo had walked, playing the armadillo, and all those creatures had heard him and finally seen that the armadillo, he had got what he was most passionate about, and to be involved in music.
All right. Next up is Chris.
Good evening, everyone. So, a long time ago, there was deep in the middle of the woods, there was an old wooden cabin. And inside this old wooden cabin lived a small little girl by the name of Oksana. Now, Oksana was very sad and very lonely, for she used to live with her parents at the edge of town until her mother had decided that they couldn't afford to have a child when winter was coming. Left to fend for herself, Oksana had always wished to return to her family and home. So anyway, the night was coming upon, and she gathered some berries, as well as made a fire in the fireplace of the cabin, and decided to sleep the night away. Until that very same cold night, there was a strange knock on the door. Oksana wakes up, and then looks at the door in slight confusion, for she had no idea what it could be at this time of night. So, Oksana carefully walks over to the door, and then she gently opens it. And she looks past the door, her eyes widened, for she could not believe what she was looking at. It was horrible, disgusting, unbelievable. It was a floating, ghostly, disembodied cow's head. It was staring at her with haunted eyes. And Oksana was freaking out, and she had her arms like this and stepping back a bit. And the cow said, it could talk. "Excuse me, I would like a place to sleep at night and some food." Oksana was still scared out of her wits, but at the same time, she was thinking. The cow's head didn't seem to be hostile, and all it was asking for was some food and a place to sleep. It was very cold. So Oksana, out of the kindness of her heart, reluctantly agreed. She brings the cow's head in and fed him some berries, some spare berries, and the cow's head floated on top of the little mantle of the fireplace and made himself nice and comfy. "Thank you." The cow's head begins to sleep, and Oksana was still looking at it very suspiciously, but at the same time she was very, very tired. So she too falls asleep. The morning comes by, and Oksana wakes up. She looks over to the fireplace and sees that the cow's head had mysteriously disappeared. But it left something. There was something shiny, glowing on the floor. So Oksana walks over and then picks it up. It was a fist-sized sapphire. As she was staring at this with oohs and ahs at its glorious shine, there was another knock on the door. This time she runs over to the door, sprint leap, and then she opens it. And who did she see on the other side of the door? It was her father. Her father had finally returned to bring her back home, which made her even more happy than when she picked up the sapphire. So she and her father went away from the cabin and away from the woods and finally returned home.
All right. That was Chris, and your next storyteller is Bridget. You're at letter Q.
The richest lady in all of Starhoven, a lovely seaside town, decided she needed a testament to her immense wealth. So she commissioned a wise sea captain to go out amongst the waters and find the most precious thing and bring it back to her within 5 months. Well, days turned to weeks, turned to months, and by this time, everyone has heard the rumors of this quest. Now, they were expecting a ship filled with gold or jewels or beautiful silks or sharp steel. So they all flocked to the dock when the time was up. And there they saw the richest lady in all of her finery with a beautiful emerald around her neck. The ship is at the end of the dock, and she calls up to the captain. "Oh, my captain, what have you brought me?" The captain looks down and he says, "Well, my lady, it took me a very long time, and honestly, I thought that I was going to end up empty-handed when I came back, but I found it. Wheat! You brought me a ship filled with wheat?" "Well, yes, my lady. What could be more precious than the grain that makes our bread? For if we could not sustain ourselves, what value would precious things have?" "So you're telling me all that wheat is mine and I can do what I want with it?" "Well, of course, my lady, you're the one that purchased it." "Throw it into the harbor." "My lady, surely, if you do not want this wheat, you can share it with the poor, because you know what it's like to be in need." "Me? In need? The day that this emerald returns to my hand, then I will be in need." And she drops it into the water. Well, the captain does as he said, and dumps the wheat into the harbor. And the rich lady knows that she's got to save face. So she throws a feast and invites all the rich people of Starhoven. The centerpiece of the feast was this huge, freshly caught fish. But with the jostling of setting it down, something fell from its mouth. Something glinting green tinkled across the stone. The lady went to pick it up. It's none other than the emerald that she threw in yesterday. Well, weeks occur, and the grain sprouted, and it started to catch the sand and silt that would more or less wash out to sea, creating a land bridge that cut off Starhoven and starved it of the riches of trade.
Keep clapping for Brian.
Can you guys hear me all right? There once was a boy who loved to draw. His name was Joji. But he grew up on a farm with his many brothers and sisters, and they all were great help to his mother and father, but not Joji. He just sat there in the dirt and drew for hours, but he only drew one thing: cats. Small cats, big cats, fat cats, and thin cats. Joji, stop drawing all those cats. You'll never become a farmer. I'm sorry, sir. I'll try not to. And he did try, but whenever Joji saw another farm cat go by, he would forget all about his chores and he would draw another cat. Joji will never become a farmer, said the farmer to his wife. Maybe you should take him down to the temple and introduce him to the priest. So the farmer took Joji down to the temple and introduced him to the priest. From then on, he lived in the temple and he learned reading and writing. Now, all the other students took their writings very seriously, but not Choji. He just sat there and he drew for hours. And he only drew one thing: cats. Small cats, big cats, fat cats, and thin cats. Choji, stop drawing all those cats. You'll never become a priest. I'm sorry, honorable sir. I'll try not to. And he did try, but whenever he saw a temple cat go by, he forgot all about his writings and he drew another cat. Choji, you'll never become a priest. I'm sorry, but you must leave. He went and he packed his things and he thought about how angry his father would be if he returned home. But then he remembered there was a temple in a nearby village. Maybe he could study under that priest. So he headed out to the temple, and when he got there, it was dark and empty. And he lit a lamp in the front and was very excited by what he saw next. There were empty rice paper panels all over the temple. So he got out his ink and he got out his brush and he began to draw. But he only drew one thing: cats. Small cats, big cats, fat cats, and thin cats. And on the last panel that was almost as long as the room itself, he drew a gigantic cat. It was the most big and beautiful cat he had ever drawn. He was tired and he found a closet and went to sleep. The next morning, he opened the closet doors and there was a monstrous rat as big as a cow, dead as if something had come in and smashed it into the floor. He looked around, but no one was there. Then he looked at the gigantic cat that he drew. I'm pretty sure I drew this head to the left and this tail to the right. Choji was sure of it. It was as if the cat had come down from the panel and then jumped back in. Oh, honorable cat, thank you. You saved me. From now on, I will draw cats and no one will stop me from drawing cats. Now when the villagers learned that the monstrous rat was dead, Choji became a hero. But he did not become a priest. And he did not become a farmer. He became an artist. An artist only drew one thing: cats.
Getting down to the last few storytellers here. We are now on letter P. I'm sorry. No, letter S. Let's hear it for Emily.
In ancient Japan, there lived an old stonecutter who was very wise and very knowledgeable in his trade. Because of this, he had plenty of customers, and he didn't really have any desire for all these grand things. But high in the mountain there lived a spirit who was known to make men prosperous. Now, the stonecutter shook his head in disbelief, for he'd never seen such things. But one day he was summoned to the royal palace for royal duties. He was excited, to say the least. And as he walked the halls, he looked at the glorious splendors, the curtains, the gold, everything, and in him, his heart wandered. Oh, if only I could have such things! If only I could live here! Then I would be truly happy. And in a voice, he heard it. Your wish is heard! A prince you shall be. And looking around, he didn't see anyone, so he just picked up his tools and went home. Imagine his amazement when, instead of his wooden house, it was a grand castle with all the glories, treasures, and curtains and everything he had seen there. And his heart was so happy. He was a prince, finally! And he looked around, and in all the glory, his old life was soon forgotten. Now, as the summer month came, he started to get a little bit hot. He went outside, tried to cool off, but nothing worked. He looked up in the sky, the sun, he glared, and he wished that he could be colder, but seeing that nothing was happening, he cried out in anger, I rule over all, yet I can't even control the sun? I don't want to be a prince, I want to be the sun. And the voice answered again, your wish is heard, the sun you shall be. And the sun he was, for a few days. But then a cloudy day came, and again in fury he cried out, can the clouds control me too? I don't want to be the sun anymore, I want to be the clouds. And the voice again replied, your wish is heard, the clouds you shall be. And in a mass fury, he threw out all the hurricanes and thunderstorms and everything he could throw. And soon enough, the earth was flooded, and he looked with glee over all he had done. But there in the corner, the mountains, they didn't do anything. They didn't bow or anything. Could the mountains be more powerful than I, he wondered? Finally, he decided, no, I don't want to be the clouds. I wish to be the mountains and stand mighty and strong. And the voice again replied, your wish is heard, the mountains you shall be. And this time he stood with all of his might, and nothing could shake him. He was sturdy and true. But there at his feet, what was that? A humble stonecutter? He hammered away, tick, 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 and he thought, no, there's no way he can be more powerful than I. I'm a mountain. But sure enough, a little chunk fell and fell, and he cried out, no, 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 this isn't what I want. I want to be a man. Please, let me please be a man again. And finally again, the voice replied, your wish is heard. A man once more you shall be. But this time, the humble stonecutter remembered what it was to be thankful, and he lived his life happy and true. And the thing I want to leave with you is to always be thankful, for thankfulness is the key to life.
And next up, we're going to be skipping over letter T and jumping right to letter U. So let's hear it for Justice.
Okay, on a hot summer's day, where the haystacks piled high and the meadows went on forever, there was a young mother duck, all pretty and fair. And she was giving birth to 3 little eggs. 2 of them came out and shouted, tweet, tweet. And the other ones came out and shouted, tweet, tweet. And the mother greeted them with a quack, quack. And she noticed her 3rd egg had not hatched yet. She walked over to it as all the other ducks did, and they were like, And so the egg started to shake, and out comes this big, large, ugly duckling with beady eyes and featherless black fur, and she was really confused. She was like, that's not mine. Is that yours? No, that's not yours either. And all the brothers and sisters were confused. They're like, okay, we're related to him, so that's not good. And days went on, and they were swimming in the pond with the mother, and the little ugly duckling stayed in the back. And one duck asked, well, why are you in the back? And he was like, well, my brothers and sisters are embarrassed of me. And the duck was like, well, we'll keep you as a friend simply because we've never had an ugly friend before, so you can stay with us. And days went on and winter came, and he sat up and looked at the sky as the pond froze over, and on the left side he noticed this bush, and the bush started to rattle. And out comes these beautiful white swans flying through the sun, and as they flew through the sun, their wings would sparkle, and he was like, oh, wow, that's beautiful. I've never seen anything like them in my life, where can I go to be like them? And they flew up to the north, and he thought all day really hard. He was like, I know I can't be like them. And they simply they might kill me because I'm ugly, so that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go up to them and have them kill me. So days went on, he waddled up to the north, climbing through blizzards and mountains, and he kneeled before the head goose, and he was like, kill me. And the goose was like, well, why? And then he was like, simply because I'm ugly. Have you not seen me? Have you looked at everybody else? That's why. And the goose stood him up. And he said, my little duck, you are the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. And all the other ducks gathered around, and they were like, that's true, let's look at him. And he's like, they're lifting up his feathers. He was getting a little shy, but again, he was blushing because he was so happy. And the little duck had never known of such happiness, for he was always the ugly duck.
Next up is Christian. We have 3 more to go.
All right. So there I was, standing beneath a tall oak tree, watching all these animals frolic in the meadows. And then I looked to my right, and I noticed the shadow of a man approach me ever so steadily. And when he gets closer, is a man from the village of the mountains. And when he gets near to me, I ask, because I'm in the mood for a story, all right, tell me a vision. Well, our elders tell us to eat in this way and that way, and pray in this manner and that.
that is how the elders have taught us. Okay, sounds fair. And so he moseys on off, and I'm sitting there waiting for what appears to be another man approaching. And this man appears to be the people from the sea. Tell me a vision, as I ask him when he gets closer. And the man looked at me, and he replied in the same manner. Well, our teachers tell us to do this and that, and to pray in this manner and that, for that is how we have been taught by the elders. I feel like I've heard this before. And so that man moseys off. And then two more people come, people from the plains and people from the desert. And they say the same thing. The elders have taught them to pray in this manner and that. Okay. So I decide to talk to the Lord above and ask him, what vision have you granted them? For it seems like it's very similar. And so the Lord above says unto me, well, I have given them this vision that it is unique to them and them alone. And yet they seem to be blinded by it and trying to force it on to other people. That doesn't sound great at all. And so I decided to gather up all the people from the plains, the mountains, the sea, and the desert. Can't forget about the desert people. And I talked to them. All right, so you have been given such a great gift, and yet you have forsaken it and are blinded by it. This is something that's unique to your own selves. You shouldn't be forcing it on other people. I know it is hard for you to pray for this, for this is something that the elders have passed on to you for generation after generation, and yet the elders no longer walk this earth, so you don't need to worry about that. So what I want you to do is sit there, and I want you to pray for the vision that you have been granted. I know it will be hard, but it will be a good life.
Thank you, Christian. And next up is Monique, our penultimate teller.
Manuel was tired of just standing there and not enjoying himself at the ball. He was like, you know what? I'm gonna listen to Manuel. I'm gonna listen to Ernesto. It's not my fault that my so-called girlfriend Anita could not make it to the ball. You know what? I'm gonna look for the most beautiful girl here and I'm gonna dance with her. So he's looking, and he sees her. Oh, was she beautiful. She had long black hair, fair, pale skin, and a beautiful white gown that drifted all the way down to the floor. But she was hiding behind a fern bush, and he didn't know why. Whatever, I'm gonna dance with her. So he goes up to her and he asks her to dance. And she's really surprised that he even bothered to come up to her, like as if he saw her at all. But she agrees. And so they dance and dance, and they have such an awesome time. And they basically dance the night away. But eventually they both get tired, and Manuel's like, I'm gonna go get us something to drink, okay? And she's like, all right, I'm gonna go wait outside. So he goes, and Ernesto's there, and he's laughing. Amigo, when I told you to dance, I meant with a partner. Manuel was confused by this. What are you talking about? I was dancing with someone. I was dancing with the most beautiful girl here. You're just jealous. So he stormed off and he went outside to meet the girl. Outside, he expected to see her happy. She looked so beautiful under the moonlight. But suddenly she became sad. Thank you for the dance, senor. It's been such a long time since I've been able to dance. But I'm afraid I must be going. Manuel didn't want her to leave. He wanted her to stay. He wanted to be with her. Don't go, he pleaded. Come with me, she says. And as Manuel was about to take her hand, something happened. her hand started becoming see-through, and it was turning gray and rotted. And Manuel could see the cobblestone wall behind her, and as the fear began to rise in his voice, and he tried to speak the words, "What are you?" her face started contorting into a gruesome, horrible creature. And Manuel screamed and ran. The next day, Ernesto went over to his house and asked him what happened. So Manuel told him, "Amigo, you saw the ghost of Consuela, my friend. They say she died a horrible, gruesome death before she had a chance to visit her first ball, and she vowed to return to every ball to receive the dance that death stole from her." Manuel was so freaked out by this that he swore and vowed that he would never dance with another except for his beloved Anita, and he realized that he would stay true to her forever until the day of his very last breath. And he kept that promise for as long as he lived, until the day of his deathbed, where he lied, dying, and with his last breath, he looked up, and Consuelo was staring down at him.
Many years ago, back when animals could talk to one another and we humans could understand what they said, there were two animals, a rabbit and a frog, playing up on a Tibetan mountaintop. And they were hopping back and forth and playing, and it was all nice and fun, until over yonder, they see a pot of gold. You know what happens instantly. "It's mine, I saw it first!" And they're both fighting. Well, the playing turned to arguing, the arguing turned to fighting, and next thing you know, good thing that they're little creatures, but they quickly discovered that, okay, we're done fighting. The rabbit, being a conniving creature that we are aware of, says, "I know, I've got a solution." And the frog, who was also very tired, sat there and said, "Okay, I'll agree with it." Before he knew it, he had agreed to what the rabbit had, and he says, "We're going to go down to the bottom of the mountain, and tomorrow morning we'll race up to the top of the mountain, and whoever gets there first gets the pot of gold." Now, what you may not realize is frogs are also tricky. I don't know about you, but when I was young, I kissed way too many of them for other reasons. So, we go to the top of the port. As the rabbit is down at the bottom of the mountain, the frog is hopping his way down, but he went and got his two twin brothers. His first brother, he says, "Hey, you stay here halfway at the mountain, and tomorrow morning I'm going to race the rabbit, and I need you here hopping halfway up the mountain, and you start when the sun rises." And then he goes to his other brother and he says, "I want you to go to the bottom of the mountain, and you start the race with the rabbit, and I'll be at the top of the mountain." They all agreed. So the next morning, the rabbit goes down at the base of the mountain, and the frog's at the base of the mountain. And they start, and the rabbit hops and hops. And, you know, he's doing pretty good, and he looks back, and here's the frog hopping. It doesn't look like it's a fair race until the rabbit gets halfway up that mountain. And he sees the frog hopping. And he's like, "What?" Surprised, he pours it on, and he flies up that mountain, only to see the rabbit hopping in the pot of gold at the top of the mountain, going, "I've won! I've won!" Rabbit, being sad, decides that, okay, I will give up, and he goes to another Tibetan mountaintop. Meanwhile, the frog has realized his folly. He can't carry the gold, so he sits down and he's crying. Overhead, an ugly duckling is flying. And he sits down and says, "Frog, why are you so unhappy?" And the duck goes, "Well, I won this gold, but I have no way of getting it downtown or down the mountain to the town where I can spend it." And the duck goes, "I can help." And so he flies down, or brings the frog and the duck down, and says, "Well, what do I get for doing this for you?" And the frog, actually being kind of nice about it, says, "You can have half." So the duck grabs the gold, smears it all over his chest,
and changes from an ugly duckling to a duck with a golden chest. And now if any of you ever visit Tibet, you will see the sacred yellow ducks up there, and this is how they all have gold chests now.
Let's first give a round of applause, one more big round of applause for all the storytellers. Everybody did such a good job. What an incredible evening of storytelling. All right, so we are going together, we are going to do this. Oh, I forgot mine. I've got to read what the scrolls say on them. I'm just going to get them out. All right, so. Very funny, Tony. All right. So, we're going to start with 7th place, and we're going to move our way up. So, now, by the way, it was pretty close. There were votes all across the board. Every storyteller got a big handful of votes, so it was actually really close. The top 7 are all pretty much neck and neck. So, our 7th place, please give a round of applause for Monique Franco. And her scroll is going to, she gets a magic wand and a scroll, and her scroll reads, "Hear ye, hear ye. Let it be known to all that this storyteller has been awarded the Wand of the Water Drops in recognition of a fine performance at the MCC's World Folktale Throwdown. This wand may enable its owner to master the water element and turn the desert into a rainforest." Yeah, good. All right, and in 6th place, Justice Hardy. The ugly duckling. Justice will be receiving the Wand of the Feathers, and this wand may enable its owner to master the wind element and fly through the air. The scroll also reads, or may not. Anyway, we'll see. In 5th place, please give a round of applause for Michael Herrera. Michael is receiving. You got to walk all the way across stage, Michael, so you can keep clapping for him. He's receiving the Wand of the Butterflies. This wand enables its owner to control the colors of the world and change the sky into a deep violet hue, or it may not. All right, and in 4th place, please welcome Bridget Russell. These top 4 were just right there, just neck and neck. I'm talking about just a few votes that separate these 4. Bridget, you are receiving the Wand of the Fairies. And this wand may enable its owner to rule the elements and command fairies to fulfill all wishes. Or may not. All right, and in 3rd place, Emily. Emily is receiving the Wand of the Spirals. And this wand enables its owner to access vortexes and portals and travel freely between diverse dimensions. And in 2nd place, runner-up for the 1st annual World Folktale Throwdown, 2nd place, Brian Hansen. Brian's receiving the Wand of the Stars, and this wand enables its owner to control galaxies far, far away, bringing about great tranquility in the Force. And 1st place, Michael Nocton. Gossiping Clams. Hear ye, this storyteller has won the 1st annual UNCC's World Folktale Throwdown and has been awarded the Wand to rule them all. This wand may enable its owner to attain world domination. Or may not. Thank you all so much for coming out and joining us this evening. cheer.